Welcome everyone to the Culture Project series, Call to Love, Call to Hope, streaming on Facebook Live Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Time. My name's Laura with the Culture Project. I'm a second-year missionary and I serve the Diocese of Cleveland. Today, we are going to be talking about pornography and sexting. And the way this is going to work is that we're going to be giving a presentation on this topic. And then towards the second half, we're going to be answering some of your questions live. So please give us your shout outs, your comments, and all your great questions down below. And we'll do our best to answer them during the Q&A portion. And thankfully, I do not have to do this by myself. I am joined by my wonderful teammate, Andrew. So Andrew, please introduce yourself and let us know just about you.
All right. Hi, my name is Andrew, as she said. I'm also a missionary with the Culture Project, and I'm also serving in Team Cleveland, but this is my first year with the mission program.
Awesome. Great. So I'm so excited that we both get to dive into this topic today. I think it's so needed. But before we really, dive in deeper, I think it's really important to address where we're at right now, because we're all locked up in our houses, we're quarantining it up, and it's definitely not the easiest of times. And I know I'm doing my best to try to keep a healthy mentality about it all. Just today at lunch, I was saying wow, we're technically in the roaring 20s right now. It may not feel like it because we don't really seem to be living our best lives, but maybe we're having this slow start, we're catching our breath, doing a breather so that way it can really only build and escalate and get better. At least that's what I'm trying to tell myself. So knowing that there is hope during this time, but it definitely can be a struggle in the day-to-day as we're navigating quarantine. So Andrew, how are you feeling about it all? And what do you think are some of the challenges that people are facing during quarantine?
Yeah, it is a very weird moment of time that we're living in right now. Being stuck inside all day, not actually going to work, but working from home. All of these things can really, I think, build a feeling of isolation or loneliness within us, which is something that I've definitely experienced, even just in the past, I don't even know how long it's been, but the past few weeks that we've been kind of stuck inside. And that can really kind of make us feel like we're not being fulfilled in the ways that we're created to be, because we talk about in the Culture Project how human beings are really created for community and for other people, and really our purpose is to help others as well as ourselves. So a lot of our lives can feel like we're not fulfilling that purpose right now. And unfortunately, as you said, the topic of this video is pornography and sexting. So we see that a lot of people are turning to pornography or to sexting to kind of fulfill that desire that we have for connection with other people. And this is totally understandable, because right now we are feeling that lack of human connection, and we want to feel connected with another person. And a lot of the world right now is telling us that the way to get that fulfillment is actually through pornography, through sexting. Recently, Pornhub made its premium site free to everybody in the world for the next month. So that is obviously adding to a lot of people really using this as an avenue to fulfill themselves and to feel gratified. Recently, I saw a stat. This is even a couple weeks ago, but on March 20th, Pornhub released their worldwide traffic stats, and they said that the worldwide traffic has been increased by about 11%, and that was only on March 20th. And in the time since then, I'm sure it has probably increased, because that was before the United States was 100% lockdown and in quarantine at that point. So I think it's very clear that a lot of people not only are turning to this to fulfill that human connection that they want, but that the world is kind of encouraging us to go down that route. And it might make sense at first that this is going to be something that really fulfills that desire that we have. But unfortunately, we've seen just throughout scientific studies, through personal accounts, that using pornography or sexting somebody else actually doesn't fulfill that part within us that we're looking to fulfill. And in fact, it usually does the opposite. So we're looking to fulfill this, and treat this feeling of loneliness and isolation. But the thing that we're choosing to treat that with is actually something that is making us feel more isolated and feel more lonely. Because studies have shown that people with long-term pornography habits or who are struggling with pornography are actually reporting that they are feeling more lonely and more isolated from the people around them, that it really damages the ways that we connect with other people, whether that's in real life or over the internet. And there have been a lot of also research, scientific studies, a lot of things done on the addictive part of pornography as well, and showing that there are some really serious pieces of evidence that point towards pornography being something that is addictive. There have been some recent studies that have shown that brain scans of people with long-term pornography habits are actually showing very similar results to people that have had long-term hardcore drug addictions. And that it's actually shrinking the same part of our brain, which is the decision-making point of our brain. And that actually prevents us from eventually, saying no the next time we come across that thing in our lives. And it's really making it hard for us to break out of these habits. So not only is pornography not fulfilling that real connection that we're looking for with other people, but it's also making us so dependent on pornography that we have to keep coming back to that and finding ourselves kind of dug into this hole that is only bringing with it a lot of shame and a lot of isolation, and really feeling like we can't talk to anybody else about this really important thing in our lives and this struggle that we found ourselves in. And obviously during a time of quarantine, that really is not helping any of us, and it's not helping us really get the fulfillment and living the lives that we are created to live. Laura, I don't know if you have any more perspective on that. I know that pornography is something that is talked about a lot among men, but I think it would be great if you give a woman's perspective on this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you just touch on so many points of how it impacts individuals in this time of isolation and loneliness. And I think in regards to women, I also think it's really important just to particularly address them during this time, because like you said, it can often be portrayed more as a men's issue, but that is most certainly not the case. In fact, the Barna Group found that 33% of females ages 13 through 24 seek out pornography at least monthly. And that was a study that was done in 2016. And all of the other stats and research that I looked through, the numbers had increased over time. But the thing was that they fluctuate so much that they haven't been able to capture a really fullness of the number, because it is believed to be so underreported for women. And I think it's so deeply tied to this shame that's associated with it. And so I heard a really great example from one of my friends the other day. She was talking about how when it comes to men and their struggle with pornography, it's like they're being held in a community prison. So they're all in it together and they're struggling, and they all are aware that they have other people that are in the same boat. However, though, when it comes to women, this struggle has been likened to solitary confinement, because they don't know that anyone else is there or that they're struggling. They feel like no one else can identify with it because they think they're the only one. And so I think it's this element of shame that keeps it not talked about and prevents many people, not just women, from reaching out. So if there are any women in particular watching this and you still don't believe that others are struggling, I can most certainly assure you that this is a common struggle. And as missionaries, we have the opportunity to speak about these topics with young women. And this is one of the things that they'll come up to us after a talk and share. And when they approach us after they, detail their struggle and their story, almost every single individual will say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just shared that," or "I've never told anyone this before." And while I admire that beauty in that vulnerability, and it is such a gift to receive them, I don't want to be the last person that they talk to about it. I want them to feel capable of overcoming this, and to be sure that they're not alone. Both men and women, we need to support one another in this struggle, because this is currently a human problem. And I think this is especially highlighted during this time of loneliness and isolation. Our desires to be in that relationship are just ever more even present. And so I think in these times we're really grasping. And maybe some of us are feeling this way or experiencing that while in quarantine. I know most of our communication is through technology, and it's not satisfying this desire we have to be with others face to face in relationship. And if you can hear this loud banging in the background, that is the pipes at the house that we're staying at. They just love to play a symphony, so apologize for that. But getting back to the point here, our communication, we desire to be face to face. We're not made to connect with others through a screen. And so it's often in this longing that we have that we're seeing this for counterfeits, for things we ultimately deserve. So we're seeing the spike in this pornography during this time as a way to satisfy those desires. But pornography isn't just this isolated and impersonal issue. It's actually extending beyond just the screen, but into our relationships in a more local and personal way through the issue of sexting. So these two things together have been deemed by many as the solution to loneliness during quarantine. And some examples have been highlighted and encouraged, particularly on dating apps. So dating apps are often sharing that sexting is the best way to handle social distancing. And some are even marketing themselves during this time as the best avenue for sexting. And it doesn't just stop in this dating realm in the apps there. It also goes over to social media, particularly through Snapchat. So Teen Vogue recently posted a story on the Discover tab that was teaching and encouraging users how to sext and provided this like step-by-step how-to guide. And so for those individuals who maybe are in a relationship or seeking out to start one, this is what they're seeing as they scroll, and they're being told that, like, this is the best advice. But as I was like thinking and reflecting upon this, I was like, is this actually true? Like, is this getting us what we're looking for? And so I did my own research and followed up and found a study that was done by the University of Alberta. And what they found was that couples who regularly sex, they have more conflict and they feel less secure in their relationship. They also show lower levels of commitment to their partners, were more likely to use pornography and exhibit infidelity. And so what these researchers came to conclusion of is that sexting doesn't seem to be a feature of a healthy relationship. And one of the research, in fact, they're like very bluntly said that, yes, like we want this end goal, like a good relationship, but we want to do it without all the hard work, the talking, the listening. Instead, we want to just go immediately to intimacy and shortcut all of those hard work pieces by sexting. And so I think just this piece of research alone speaks to the fact that we're not getting what we're looking for by sexting. Not only is this not helping the relationship grow, but it can have lasting consequences that I think a lot of people aren't aware of. So these are three things that I'll share with you that we talk to students about. And so the first of which is content. Once it's on the internet, it's out there and it can be retrieved. It's no longer private and it doesn't just disappear as many are led to believe with like apps such as Snapchat. And then the second thing is that once we hit the send button, that content is out of our control. We don't know how someone is going to use it, if they're going to save it, share it, or hold it over us in any way, which can be a very scary and dangerous thing. And the third thing, which I think is one of the biggest points, is that sexting is considered child pornography if you are under the age of 18. And yes, sexting laws vary from state to state. So in some places, it can result in really serious legal consequences. And so I know as we share those things in a classroom and with students, I think it's one of the most heartbreaking things to look around the room, because what we see as the speakers, we see students just sitting there with like wide eyes and jaws dropped because no one's ever told them about the consequences, and they've really never taken the time to think about what could happen if they sexed. And yes, I think it's so important that they know those things, but I think what's worse is that they're sitting there not knowing who they are or what they're made for. They just think that sexting is something that they have to do to prove themselves, or it's just like this natural part of our relationships nowadays. And I think this is just most especially prevalent among the women that we speak to. In fact, one of my teammates, Carly, she just shared after a presentation that she was talking with two high school freshmen, and they told her that every girl they knew in the 9th grade had been asked for a sext. And so in this case, and in so many others, women are the main target. And while they may not be the ones initiating, they're going to be the ones that are forced to respond to this request or this photo showing up in their text messages. So whether they want to engage or not, they're going to have to deal with this reality, which is so heartbreaking. And I know I've done a lot of talking on this issue of sexting. So Andrew, if you could provide just some perspective, especially when it comes from a male.
Yeah, absolutely. as you said, a lot of times the people that are being asked for sexually explicit images of themselves are young women. And unfortunately, the people on the other side of that exchange are usually young men. And a lot of times, there might be some pressure to like prove that you will be able to get this out of somebody else. And unfortunately, a lot of times when we feel like we have to give in to these things, we're not living up to the men that we're being called to be. Because we as men, really as people in general, we are really all created to like live our lives for the people around us, and asking them for something that we will eventually use to use them as for our own gratification is really not, living the way that we were created to live, and honestly doesn't even give us that fulfillment that we're looking for. And if you really think about it, especially speaking to all the men out there that maybe have already asked somebody or are thinking about asking somebody for something like this, if we really think about it logically, like this is really the same thing as the pornography that I was talking about earlier. The only difference is that you actually know the person in the image instead of not knowing them, and that doesn't change the fact that we're still using that person for our own gratification. But unfortunately, there are a lot of times that we will find ourselves feeling like we have to do this, or we're just looking for some sort of connection with another person. But the truth is that like this form of communication is never actually connecting us to the other person. Is only using their body for our own gratification. And these are a lot of really negative, bad things going on in the world right now. And it's easy for us, I think, especially in a time of a pandemic, for us to get in that mindset of this is a really terrible time. This is something that is only going to have a negative effect on us as people and going forward. But I think it's important for us to realize that with this hard time in our lives also comes a lot of opportunities for us to really grow as people and to grow in virtue as well. But there are so many more opportunities and unique opportunities of this time that we just happen to live in right now, for us to really become the people that we are created to be. So I'd like to maybe transition into talking really practically about what does this look like right now in this crazy time that we live in? Like, what does it look like to fight against a porn addiction? What does it look like to try and stop sexting within our own lives right now? Because things have definitely changed even in the past few weeks. But some things haven't entirely changed with the ways that we approach these topics. Specifically, when we talk about pornography habits and trying to break out of that, one of the most important things I want anybody to know about this is that in order to break out of this habit, to win this fight, break out of this struggle, it's really hard to do that if you're doing it just by yourself. You're not letting anybody know that you need help, or that you are striving to get better at this. It's really hard to do that if you're just isolating yourself. And right now, of course, it's very easy for us to do that, to isolate ourselves and to just do things alone, because we feel like there's nobody else in real life for us to talk to. But the great news is that there are so many ways for us to connect with the other people in our lives that can actually help us and also help them to become the people that we have been created to be. Right now, I said at the beginning that Pornhub has made their premium site free for the next month. Well, a filtering site that we really like called Covenant Eyes has also done the same thing for their service as well. They've allowed anybody to get a 30-day free trial. And what they do is they have an app you can download on your phone and on your computer, basically any device that you're using the internet on, and it will block all of the pornography websites, so you can't actually access them. But what it also does is it actually looks at the internet search history and at the websites that you're visiting, and will actually send a report to your accountability partner. So if there's somebody in your life that you want to be able to help you, you can put their email into Covenant Eyes, and then every week or every few weeks, however much you want to send them a report, it will send them a report of all your internet activities. So just knowing that everything that you've done on the internet is going to somebody else, I think is a really great inspiration for us to really do better, because we know that information is going out of our hands. So that can be something that maybe keeps us in line and just reminds us that the things that we do on the internet actually do affect other people. A lot of times it's easy, especially now that we don't see real people in real life a whole lot, to start to believe that the people that we see on screens aren't actually human, aren't being affected by what we do. There's another great app that I just want to suggest people use. My live team is called the Victory app, and this is 100% free all the time, not just in quarantine. And I think it's a pretty great tool to use. I've seen it being used very effectively by men of really and women of really all ages. So it's an app that allows you to really build a community around your struggle and to really build you up. And what the Victory app does is it allows you to really like enter in all your friends' profiles and all their email addresses, all their profiles on the app. And anytime that you're feeling tempted or you're feeling like you might fall back into pornography or do something that you don't want to do, you can actually hit a button and it will alert those people so that they can give you a call, they can check up on you, or just keep you accountable in any way that you've set up. But it also allows you to really track the times that you've fallen throughout your calendar. And I think that's another really important thing for us to recognize going forward, that is this becomes so much easier if we understand, why am I even doing this in the first place? Because usually when we're going to pornography, we're going to sexting, the reason that we're doing that is because we're trying to fulfill some sort of desire on our hearts. And maybe that's a desire for connection, maybe that's just a desire to get out of boredom. But if we actually start to recognize what is triggering us to go do this, we can actually more directly combat the things that are leading us into pornography. When we're talking about pornography triggers, there's a pretty common acronym that goes around called HALT, H-A-L-T, and those are the 4 most common triggers for people that are going into pornography. And the HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And those 4 things are usually the things that we're trying to fulfill when we're going to pornography. So if you keep that in mind and you look back on your day and you see where you've fallen, you can actually name the reason that you did that. The next time you come across a situation, you can actually answer that desire or answer that situation with a way that is actually healthy. Like if you were just angry, you can maybe go on a run, vent some of your energy outside, maybe actually call that person that you're angry at and reconcile with them. If you're lonely, obviously, giving somebody a call over the phone is actually going to lead you to way more connection with another person than using somebody else over pornography. And there are so many other more healthy ways for us to really meet these needs in our lives rather than using somebody else's body for our own gratification. And lastly, I just wanted to again reiterate that prayer is also a very important part of this journey, and really important for us to recenter our lives on what is most important and to recognize, why are we even living our lives? Like, what are we living our lives for? And now in quarantine, we have a lot of extra time and a lot of opportunities for us to really dive deeper into prayer, maybe read a good spiritual book. Any of these things that really start to reorient our lives can also really help us get out of these ruts that we find ourselves in. So those are some really concrete ways to keep yourself accountable, maybe build some accountability community as well. But I know that there are also, when we're starting to find freedom from pornography, especially in this time, there's still a lot of free time in our lives and a lot of points in our lives where if I'm not looking at pornography, what am I doing? Because we used to fill that time with pornography. So Laura, I don't know if you have any suggestions as to fun things that we can actually do that are building ourselves up rather than tearing other people down.
Absolutely. Gosh, my brother, you nailed it. Freaking accountability, identifying triggers, prayer. Those are all bomb things to do to get yourself working through that, if that is something that you're struggling with. But like you were saying, there's so many ways that not only to keep occupied, but just to build new habits and fruitfully use your time. So something that I'm just a huge advocate of is we always have capacity to learn something new, to do something more with our lives. So if we're going to be using our screen time, we can use it purposefully. So if you want to kind of look for a replacement for your screen time, there are so many awesome things going on right now, especially during quarantine, a lot of discounted courses, free things being offered online. So if you want to invest in learning something for your career, something that maybe you want to pursue in the future, or even beyond that, just things that interest you. One thing that I just keep seeing advertised every time I log into Facebook, or just I've also like known people who have taken classes through here. It's called masterclass. So basically what it is, it's like taught by famous people who are just like experts in their field, whether it's cooking, entrepreneurship, filmmaking, what have you. And it's just like a baller way to just learn more. Like that's an awesome place to go if you're looking to just maybe dive more into any of those things. It's also a great time to pick up a new skill. So if you wanna, let's say like maybe you've been like dreaming about learning a language forever. Yo, never been a better time. Like download Duolingo, Babbel, freaking learn your language. It's an awesome opportunity to do that. And also you can ditch the screen and get practical. So maybe you just like really need to fix something around the house. All right, you got the clog sink that ain't gonna take care of itself. Like go for it, learn how to do it. I think we are lacking in a lot of skills as young adults. So why not use this time to learn how to adult better? I know I need to. Release your inner Chip and Joanna Gaines, get some renovations going on. Just get crafty with it. There's so many things that you can do to learn and to gain new skills to like not only fill this time, but improve and better yourself. And not only just yourself, but like that thing that we're longing for is this connection and this relationship. So if you are quarantined with other people, like invest in them. Something that my teammates and I have been doing recently is that during lunch, they have been teaching me about all things football. I have to say that I am not necessarily the most well-formed. So they are honoring my ignorance by educating me about different teams in the NFL. We started out with the Browns since we're in Cleveland. Anybody ask me about some of their star players, I'll tell you about them and their wonderful head coach. So just let me know. So like little things like that can like build your relationships, even if it's something small and silly. Like those are the things that are gonna get us through and help us through these times where we might be struggling. And I think, Andrew, you had like a few more that I know have been just really awesome for not only just investing in yourself and in your relationships, but just like for things to do in your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I just want to point out that Laura has learned so much about football. Like, I'm very proud of her new knowledge of that. And honestly, at this point, knows as much about the Browns as I do, or I think probably most of the people in Cleveland. So she's really becoming an expert. But there are a lot of other things we can do to really spend our free time in quarantine. And I think one of the most important things for us to try out right now is maybe to take a break from technology, because at this point, like literally all of our work, all of our school, everything that we're doing is through the internet. So for us to take a break from that and actually do something in the real world can actually keep us grounded and kind of recenter ourselves as actual human beings that live in an actual environment. So maybe even just little things that you can do with your hands, like doing a puzzle or just cooking a meal, or even like playing musical instruments, doing art. All of those kind of physical activity things that are actually getting real with the world around you, I think first of all just gets us off this world that pornography is available on, but also just in general, like really starts to re-enter ourselves into the actual world around us. So we become more people of the world and people of Earth rather than people of the internet, as right now it's becoming more and more just a world that's entirely online. So just to remind ourselves that like the world exists outside and in front of us, and we can actually interact with it, I think is a really good way for us to not just break our ties from pornography, but also just to break our ties from our attachment to technology as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So those are just like a lot of really great examples and breaks it down and is practical for the sense of like, how do you combat with the struggle with pornography? So hopefully there's something that you can take away that can help you if this is something that you're personally facing. But now we want to also break down, like, what if sexting is something that you have experienced or something that you've had to deal with in your life? Like, what do you do? Because I think so often we may hear like, like you're made for more, don't sext, which is true. But I think there's a lacking in the conversation and like, what do we actually do if this happens to us or if we've been involved in some way? So I really want to be sensitive to this and just like really break it down step by step on how do you approach this? So like, first of all, let's talk about, okay, what do I do if I receive a sext? So first and foremost, never share those images with anyone. The best thing that you can do is to delete that image from your device right away. And then following up with a response to that text message saying that, like, we do not want to receive those types of messages in the future. And if this form of communication isn't respected, or if it persists and continues, you have every right to block that number if this is happening through text messaging, or if this is happening through social media, which is very common as well. Like, you have every right to block and report them on that platform. So just a very simple, like, immediate response to, like, what do you do if you receive a sext? And I now want to kind of do the flip side of this. It's like, what happens, like, what do I do if I have sent a sext previously? So I think, especially when it comes to this, if we have sent this kind of content before, what we need to do is we need to talk to that individual who we've sent this to as soon as possible and ask them to delete it. And if that content has gone even further and been shared on social media, we need to take those precautionary steps of, like, untagging ourselves and reporting it to get it removed. So it's just like cleaning up this presence on media and helping bury those things that have no place to be there. And so those are just like the immediate, right off the cuff responses that we can do to handle those situations. And obviously, each of these situations can be so delicate and can be varying in severity, but hopefully that's just a really basic beginning guide. But now I also want to take some time to address, like, what happens in the moment, like, if we are asked for a sext message, like a sext, like, what do we do? And I know saying this, it's going to sound super simple and it's easier said than done, but we can and we should say no. And I think I got this from Jason Everett. And when I talk to women in the classroom, I tell them, if this is something that they get asked for, what they can do, the response back could be to take a picture of their hand, waving goodbye, because that is the only skin that this individual will ever see. And that can be really sassy, but I think it gets the point across. And I think the most powerful thing can be for us to stand up for the way that we deserve to be treated. And not only that, like, when we say no, we are communicating to that person that not only do I deserve better, but so do they. And sure, they might move on and go ask someone else, or maybe they really won't like our response and they'll say something mean or hurtful. But in that moment, like, I just want to remind us, like, we are having the courage to save ourselves from that heartbreak and use and stand up for our own dignity and for the dignity of that person as well. So that is a worthy battle. And at the end of the day, we never know how our actions are going to influence another person's choices. Like, maybe because we said no, we could be that individual that changes their mind. So remember just that your witness is powerful, even in these really trying and hard situations. So hopefully these 3 practicals are helpful, and if this is something that you experience, knowing how to immediately know how to navigate it. And it's important to know how to combat them, but it's also really important to talk about ways that we can connect with people that aren't sexting. And so even during this time of isolation, as we're talking about being in quarantine, it is very much possible to pursue others and find human connection. So Andrew, do you have any, like, advice or examples of how to do that during this time?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. So I think a lot of times when we're feeling lonely or feeling isolated, we kind of get in our heads that the way to, fix that problem is to find a romantic partner or fix our love life. But I think we're all forgetting that we have people in our lives that are just our friends that we can also invest in, and that those people can also make us feel less lonely and feel like a part of the community. So really investing in those kind of friendships, especially during this time. I mean, I've been on a dating fast since June, and like just being able to invest in people in front of me that are just my friends is just a really great way to spend your time and a great way to invest in other people. Me and our teammate Parker, who's the other guy on the team, we've been like trying to find creative ways to really spend our time together during the quarantine. So a lot of things are closed right now. A lot of places of business are not open right now. But Parker and I recognize that all of the fast food drive-throughs are still open. So we actually did what we call the fry tour, which is where we went to all the fast food restaurants, got their fries, and then we did like a March Madness kind of tournament between all the fries. So we tried all the fries, decided which one was the best, which, if you're wondering, is Five Guys. So if you're looking for the best fries across fast food, that's where you got to go on both taste as well as value. Five Guys is really where it's at. We've also been just trying to find engaging, fun conversations to have. So one of the projects we've been doing is we've actually been recording a podcast of our conversations, and we've just been choosing a random word off of randomwordgenerator.com and talking about that word for like half an hour. And just those conversations that aren't really about anything super important, but are still connecting with that person in front of us, every few days, like that really helps to build this connection and make us feel less isolated, and really just keep us sane in this time where we're not actually encountering new people or encountering people that we know in front of us every single day. We've also, tried to do things with a larger community as well. A lot of the Culture Project missionaries right now are engaged in a Culture Project Words with Friends tournament. So we're bringing that back, doing some word games, trying to keep our minds, on top of things. I'm not doing so hot right now in the tournament, but it's been fun to really connect with the people that I work with and people that I'm friends with. So just those little things that we can really find connection with another person. It doesn't have to be romantic, doesn't even have to be a super big important conversation. Just those little things can make a big difference as far as us like keeping this connection between us and the world around us. But I'm sure there are people that maybe have questions about the romantic side of it. I don't know if Laura, if you have any, tips about that part of it.
Oh, I sure do. Hopefully I can provide some guidance for those who are in relationships during the quarantine. Hashtag it's frustrating. But even though you can't be physically present to your boo, you can deepen your relationships by like getting to know the other person. This is like such a prime opportunity to invest in that. So one thing like we're super hype about at the Culture Project is we're all about like self-knowledge and like learning about our love languages, personality tests, temperaments. And so I think that could be like a fun activity for you to do in your relationship. And it's good to gain that knowledge and self-awareness about yourself and then learn that about the other person, because it's really going to be helpful as you figure out like what makes them tick, what makes them unique. Can be helpful to know how to celebrate them. And also when challenges come up, you'd be like, that makes a lot of sense, and see ways that you complement each other in ways that maybe are going to be a struggle where you might diverge. So a really beautiful time to just like learn more about the other individual that you're dating or pursuing. So easy example there. But there are like a million other ways that you can pursue the other person during this time. You can like write letters, collaborate on a Spotify playlist, watch movies, play games, like literally just pursue one another and get creative. I know I've seen awesome examples all throughout social media of how people are navigating this time of dating and Corona. Listen, it's possible and we can do it. If you really want more, last week I just participated in a Facebook Live all about dating in the coronavirus. So feel free to check out our previous videos where we cover a lot more content. And if you have more questions about that, feel free to throw them in the comment section below. And speaking of questions, Andrew, I think it is time for us. We've done a lot of talking about what we want to talk about. Now let's see what the people want to hear. So let's dive into some of these questions, and y'all came in swinging. There's some good ones here, so we're very excited to cover as many as we can with the time we have left. So the first question that we have is, if I've heard friends say that if you don't send a sext, he'll just get it from somewhere else. How would you respond? So my initial thought right off the bat is that if he's just going to get it from somewhere else, like you don't need to be the one that sends that, like we have the power to say no in these circumstances, and hopefully like our own witness will communicate that like we're made for more and so is he. And if that's not the case, if he goes looking somewhere else, like that is something that person's going to have to deal with. And it's obviously a struggle to see that person going on and asking for that from other people. But sometimes there are situations that are out of our control. Andrew, do you have any perspective on like how would you respond in that situation, or how to navigate it?
Yeah, I think that I mean, the thought that this is inevitable just isn't really 100% true because like you don't know for sure that he's going to get it from somewhere else. But even if you will, like you really don't need to be a part of that. You don't need to. He doesn't need to use you as his source of gratification. But also, like I would just encourage you to first of all say no, but then also encourage your friends that maybe he's going to ask the next day that they can also say no. Like if you know the next person he's going to ask, also be there for them and support them through that experience as well. Because if we all band together, there's a lot of power in numbers, and if we're all exhibiting this attitude towards sexting that it's not okay, that's how cultural changes actually happen. Is through multiple people all getting behind the same idea. So it is really a team effort. So yeah, talk to your friends and talk to the people that he also might ask about that, and remind them that they're worth and that they're also not worth being used by that guy.
Yeah, that's awesome and beautiful advice. Like not only like standing up for yourself, but really just encouraging those around you that you're close to hold strong. I think that's something that we can all take away from this, that like we can influence others as well as we navigate those things and be a support for them. I think a lot of times it can feel so lonely in these battles, whether it is with pornography or with sexting, and feel like we're the only one. Either, we're struggling with pornography, or like we're the only ones saying no to a sex. So I think it's important that we band together during this time to just combat that loneliness in it. So that's really awesome advice. All right, our next question is, what should you do if you find out your significant other struggles with pornography? Andrew, do you have any initial thoughts with this one?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have that conversation because somebody that is struggling with pornography, that's going to affect the way that they view the other people around them. And if you're their significant other, it's definitely affecting the way that they view you. So it's very important to you to know how this is affecting the other person you're in a relationship with. But I think the most important thing, of course, is to come at this with an attitude of love, and to recognize that this person probably doesn't want to be hurting you in this way, but they have found themselves in a habit that is really hard to break out of. And also to be aware that there are varying scales of where people are at with this, and there are some people that are so entrenched that they probably need more help than you can necessarily give them. I would really stress that it should never weigh on you, or the burden shouldn't rest on you to free them of this. That's not your responsibility. But to help them out in any way that you can, or to point them to the people that are really equipped to help them out, I think is a great way to respond to that. And sometimes it might mean having to break up with that person if they are so entrenched in this that they really need a lot more professional help, and they are really not able to break out of it. Sometimes it is a point of like I need to be out of this relationship because this other person is not going to be able to treat me with the respect that I deserve, at least at this moment. But also never losing the fact that they are a fellow human being, and they are still worthy of love and respect, even though they have messed up in this way before. But I also want to say that if this is a person that you say struggles with pornography, but if this is somebody that is like not even willing to try and break their habits, that is definitely a red flag, warning sign. And at that point, you should definitely like start to get out of that relationship, because that person is really not allowing themselves to view other people in a way that will make it easier for them to actually sacrifice for the other person. And I think relationships are all about sacrificing for the other person. So if they're making themselves incapable of that, that's a really hard thing to deal with, but also I think a really big red flag in that relationship. Laura, do you have anything else about that?
Yeah, no, that was awesome, and a lot of similar points that I had wanted to communicate as well. In fact, my teammate Emily, shout out, we were just like talking about this earlier today, and she shared with me like this awesome resource by Everett Fritz. And so he was just like in this, it was talking about like help. I'm in a relationship with a porn addict, and in that he like that broke down different categories. So very similar to what you were saying, Andrew, like in the first category, it was that like your significant other doesn't see a problem with their pornography addiction. So as you were saying, like the only thing that really you can do is break up, because if this is something that is inhibiting your relationship, because it is inhibiting their ability to love and to prioritize you, like the missionary dating aspect of this seldom works. Like we're not going to be their savior in their battle with pornography, especially when they're not open to changing or they don't see an issue with it. So that's the first category. The second category would be like if your significant other, fiance, or husband is seeking help for their pornography addiction. We just have to remember that they have to be personally motivated, and it can't just be for us. And I think this is a struggle that maybe individuals fall into when they're younger, so it can really be a struggle to break out of. And as like Andrew was saying, like they have to be compassionate and in their striving. And if we're staying in this relationship, there has to be an expectation that they're doing everything in their power to overcome it, that they have that accountability, that they're getting the filtering software. If it's very severe, like getting counseling, doing all those things, that we're praying for their progress and for their just overcoming this. So, and if that relationship hasn't moved forward to marriage yet, like there should be expectations set of where that person should be before moving forward in that relationship. So I just think it's very important to have those conversations, but also be just very respectful of their struggle and wanting to support them, but at the same time knowing that like at the end of the day we can't change it. That is a personal choice and conviction that they need to have.
All right, the next question is very similar to this one, and it's saying, what about a friend that struggles with pornography? How do you even talk about this / bring it up with them? So this is not a romantic interest person, but just a friend that you have that maybe has come to you with their pornography struggle. And again, I think a lot of the same advice still applies as far as being supportive of them breaking free from this habit. But I think especially with friendship, I think it can almost even more feel like we are the ones that have to get them out of this, and that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to help this other person get out of this habit. But like I said at the beginning, this is a really hard struggle to go through alone. So just being there for them, offering to be their accountability partner, offering to really help them find support or help them find filtering software, like just being available to help them out of it, I think is really important, as well as just really being open about the ways that you know that this person is made for more than this, and that you see them as more than this issue that they've come to you against. A lot of the things that come along with a pornography habit, with the sin of pornography, there is a lot of shame that comes along with that activity. And a lot of times people that are struggling with this can feel like this is the only defining factor about this, and they have started to find their identity in this thing that they've kind of lost their lives to. So just reminding them that they are so much more than that struggle, and that they are a human being that is worthy of love and respect, no matter the fact that they have lost their way in the past or continuing to struggle against this. So just being a supportive friend at that point. And of course, if you notice that this is something that is like really negatively affecting their lives and they cannot break out of course, directing them towards some sort of professional or counseling is, I think, always the best way to go.
Yeah, those are some awesome points on how to help just like a friend navigate it. I think it's really important to lead with vulnerability, especially if this is something that like we personally have struggled with. So I think that we can walk alongside of them, particularly also if like we've been in that struggle. So yeah, beautiful tips to help them along the way. And going off of that note about accountability, we had a question that is having an accountability partner of the same gender important? Does it matter? So I think to kind of lead off of that, I think it can be really beneficial to have one that is of the same gender. And I also want to touch on the fact that like if you are in a relationship, your significant other should probably not be your accountability partner. Like you should have someone outside of that relationship helping you and holding you to those things that you're striving in and working on, because it can put this pressure on that individual that is in a relationship to be your everything, to have to guide you through every step of the way. So I think that is just a really essential component. Like if you're in a dating relationship, find someone outside of that relationship. Do you have any thoughts about like same gender accountability? Any other points?
Yeah, I think I would even say not just is it important, but I think is necessary. Like getting somebody that is the same gender as you just really takes a lot of the complication out of it, and also takes the potential of a relationship out of it. And like a lot of times, I think if your accountability partner is somebody that you are potentially wanting to be in a relationship with, the connections that you're making with them at that point are really unhealthy if you're not like married to that person, because this is a very deep struggle that you're going through. So to try and make that connection with somebody that you could possibly be in a relationship with, I think is dangerous for both of your hearts and both of your feelings, just because of the kind of conflict that arises there. So yeah, I would say that having an accountability of the same gender is really, really important. At the same time, especially if it's somebody else that is also struggling with pornography, with a similar issue, you know that they're coming at it with the same experience as you. So there's just even more of a relatability on that in that sense, that you can both be very open about the ways that you're feeling and ways that this affects. So yeah, that's what I would say on that question.
Yeah, I also
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was just thinking on this, and like men and women are just like we are so different. Like there are differences, even just in the way that we're wired. So there are certain things that like if you're a woman struggling with pornography and you have a woman who's your accountability partner, like she can definitely like clue you in on the things that maybe you haven't thought about. Like something that was really big that I learned the other day was just like even knowing our cycles and how that impacts like maybe different triggers for us. So like even just thinking about the things that define us as a male and a female, like those can be key in us overcoming these struggles. So I think that is also super important as well. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. All right, so the next question that we have is, what are the best ways for accountability partners to support each other? So this can come in a lot of different ways, but I think the most important thing that you have to like know going into having an accountability partner is that you have to be 100% honest with how you're doing and where you're failing with them, because without that honesty, we really can't help each other, because we don't know where each other are at. But some of the things that I've seen work is have accountability partners do some sort of mortification when somebody falls. So if I have an accountability partner and I fail, I let them know right away. But then from that point, we both have to do something together, like fasting or doing push-ups or some sort of thing, some sort of punishment for that action that we do together. And that also creates a bond between us and that other person. And also lets us know that if I mess up with this, not only am I being affected, but my accountability partner also has to do something that they don't want to do as well. So having that kind of thought in your mind can also help to keep you away from these things, because it is affecting more than just yourself in like the real world around you. So those are some things that I've seen work. But again, like most importantly is like the best way to support each other is to be 100% transparent and honest about the ways that you are struggling in this fight. Laura, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I think what you said is so important. Like the honesty is so key. I also think something that is super important is setting up a scheduled time to check in with one another. Because I think if you're just like, yeah, we're like accountability partners, that's great. Like we talk every once in a while. Like no, I think like you need to have someone who, whether if you need someone to check in with you every day, if you're at that point, you need someone every day, or if you need like a weekly check-in, someone who has access to like your filtering, like they're getting sent those reports, just so it's always an active conversation. So you're genuinely having someone check in on you, like, how are you doing? Like, what are some of your triggers? Like, how have some of those things that are going on in your life impacted this? So I think that is really essential as you're navigating this as well. All right, so it's looking like we have time for one more question. And one that I particularly want to address is, how can one start seeing their worth and find healing if sexting was a part of their story? And I think we can also apply not only just sexting, but pornography, something that we really didn't get a chance to touch on too much, but I think this is a great way to end it, is talking about mercy. I think this is so core that, like, we are not defined by our mistakes and what we've done in our past or the ways that we may fall. But the biggest thing is, like, that we're striving and we're getting back up and seeing our own worth. Like, we're never going to be able to do that if we don't look to the Father himself, who is our creator and defines us and who knows us and loves us even in those struggles. Is there any other like words of advice or just encouragement for those who are struggling to see their worth and seeking healing if sexting or pornography is part of their story?
Yeah, I mean, I would just reiterate that, like, this doesn't make us who we are. Um, we're not made less valuable by the mistakes that we've made. So just keeping that at your heart and in your brain, and knowing that, like, the truth of you is that you are good and that you are created good, and that there's a reason that you exist, but also that you have been created for more than this. And if you're a victim, especially of any of these things, just reminding yourself of that, and that there is somebody that loves you out there, and that there are people that love you out there, and that you have not gone too far down this road to be redeemed, because nobody's gone too far to ever be redeemed of anything. One of the stories I like to tell when I'm giving talks about this subject, which I think is pretty powerful. The mercy of God is greater than any man's mercy can ever be, and is, like, so much greater than we can ever imagine. And if he's greater than any man, I mean, I've heard stories of men being incredibly merciful. There's of course the story of Saint John Paul II when he was the Pope. There was an assassination attempt on him, and they got very close to assassinating him, seeing as he was shot point blank through the chest. So very narrowly escaped death at that point, was shot through the chest. But after Pope John Paul II recovered miraculously in the hospital, the thing that he wanted to do was to meet the man who had shot him in the chest and see him face to face and forgive him in person. Which to me sounds insane, because if my entire interaction with another person had been them shooting me in the chest, like, the odds of me forgiving them the next day in real life is pretty low. And St. John Paul II, while he is a saint, was still just a guy. So if he can forgive that man for shooting him in the chest, God can so easily forgive us for any of our sexual sins, any of the things that we're struggling with in this realm. So just remember that, and remember that, like, God loves you no matter what, and that he wants what is best for you, and he knows that this is hard. Like, he understands that this is a struggle, and that this is something that we do have to fight through. And also just remembering that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that, like, recovery and living a life more fully alive is actually possible. There are so many examples of people that have broken, especially as far as pornography goes, broken the habit, and are now living completely changed lives, and lives that are full of virtue and really full of real love. So that's how I would end that.
Amen, brother. I couldn't say it better myself. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening, and we hope that you benefited from this conversation and took away some practicals to help you, especially during this time during quarantine. Feel free to keep joining us here at the Culture Project. We're here all the time. In fact, join us tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be hosted by the lovely Hannah G and be featuring Sam, Bree, and Sebastian, and they're going to be talking about how we can practice virtue while at home. Lord knows I need to hear that one, so I'll be joining. And as you can see, the mission of the Culture Project does continue. So if you believe in this mission and you would like to see us do more of these, consider donating to the Culture Project at thecultureproject.org/donate. The link is in the description. Y'all, has been a pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, guys.